The worst mistake of my life wasn't taking those photos. It was looking back. My shift at St. Catherine Medical Center ended at 2:07 a.m., 17 minutes later than it was supposed to. Not that I was counting. After 12 hours in the emergency department, my feet hurt. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, and all I wanted was my apartment, a hot shower, and 6 hours of sleep before doing it all again. The automatic doors slid open behind me as I stepped into the humid Manhattan night. A light rain drifted through the parking lot, turning the asphalt into a mirror of blurred yellow streetlights. I adjusted the strap of my bag and started toward my aging Honda Civic parked near the back fence. The lot was mostly empty. A few employee vehicles. A delivery van. Silence. At least, it should have been silent. Halfway to my car, I heard voices. Male voices. Low. Serious. The kind of conversation people have when they don't want to be overheard. I slowed for a second, then kept walking. New York taught you not to get involved in things that weren't your business. I knew that rule well. I intended to follow it. Then my phone slipped from my hand. It hit the pavement and bounced once before landing face up. Great, I muttered, bending down to grab it. The camera app had somehow opened during the fall. The flash went off unexpectedly. Once. Then again. I frowned and locked the screen without thinking much about it. Somewhere beyond the row of parked vehicles, the voices stopped. The sudden silence felt strange. Heavy, like the city itself was holding its breath. A chill ran across my arms despite the warm night air. I looked toward the far corner of the lot and caught sight of several dark figures standing near a black SUV. Expensive suits. Tall silhouettes. Nothing unusual in Manhattan, except something about the way they stood made my stomach tighten. One of the men turned slightly in my direction. Even from a distance, I felt his attention lock onto me. I looked away immediately. Don't stare. Don't get curious. Don't create problems. I reached my car, unlocked the door, and climbed inside. My hands were trembling for reasons I couldn't explain. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe I was imagining things. I started the engine and drove home through nearly empty streets. By the time I reached my apartment in Queens, I had convinced myself I was being ridiculous. I kicked off my shoes, fed my cat, and collapsed onto the couch without even changing clothes. Morning arrived far too quickly. Sunlight poured through the blinds and landed directly on my face. Groaning, I reached for my phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. No voicemail. That alone was strange. Then I opened my photo gallery. My blood turned cold. There were 2 new photos from the parking lot. Blurry, dark, accidental, but unmistakable. Several men standing together beside a black SUV. And in the second image, one face was visible. Sharp features, dark hair, green eyes fixed directly on the camera, fixed directly on me. My phone rang again. Unknown number. For several seconds, I just stared at the screen. Then I answered. Silence. A slow breath. And finally, a calm male voice that sent ice through my veins. Emily Carter, he said. You have something that belongs to me. My fingers tightened around the phone until my knuckles turned white. For a moment, I could not speak. I could only sit on the edge of my couch, staring at the photographs that should not have existed and listening to the quiet sound of my own breathing. The voice on the other end of the line remained calm, controlled, patient. Somehow that made it worse. I think you have the wrong person, I finally said. My attempt at confidence sounded weak even to me. A brief silence followed. Then a soft chuckle. No, Emily, I do not. Hearing my name from a stranger sent another wave of unease through me. I had never heard that voice before. I was sure of it. Yet he spoke as if he had known me for years. Who is this? I asked. Someone trying to solve a problem before it becomes dangerous. I stood and walked toward my apartment window. Outside, the street below looked completely normal. Delivery trucks, people walking dogs, a teenager riding a bicycle. The ordinary world continued as if mine had not just tilted sideways. What do you want? I asked. The photographs. My eyes drifted back to the images on my phone. The second photo still displayed that face. Dark hair, green eyes. The unsettling certainty that he had been looking directly at me even before I knew he existed. I already deleted them. I lied. Another pause. Longer this time. No, he said quietly. You did not. A chill crawled down my spine. Somehow he sounded absolutely certain. I checked my front door without thinking. Still locked. Deadbolt engaged. Yet suddenly the apartment felt far too small. How do you know that? I whispered. Because if you had deleted them, I would not be calling. The line went silent, then disconnected. Just like that. No threats. No raised voice. Nothing dramatic. Somehow that frightened me more than any angry warning could have. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. I tried making coffee. I forgot to drink it. I turned on the television. I could not focus on anything being said. Every few minutes I found myself checking the locks again. By noon I convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone from the hospital had somehow gotten my number. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation for all of this. Then my phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. One sentence. Look outside. My stomach dropped. Slowly, I stepped toward the window. A black SUV sat across the street, parked beside the curb. Engine off. Tinted windows. Motionless. I could not see inside. I stared at it for several seconds before forcing myself to look away. This was crazy. It had to be a coincidence. Then another message arrived. Third floor. Blue curtains. White cat. I felt the blood drain from my face. The sender was describing my apartment. My home. The place where I was supposed to be safe. A third message appeared almost immediately. We need to talk, Emily. Before someone else finds you first. I spent the next 20 minutes pacing my apartment with my phone clutched in one hand and my keys in the other. My cat, Oliver, watched me from the arm of the couch with the same judgmental expression he always wore when I was making bad decisions. Unfortunately, I was running out of good ones. The black SUV remained parked across the street. It never moved. Nobody stepped out. Nobody approached the building. It simply waited. That somehow felt more unsettling than if someone had been pounding on my door. Around 1 o'clock, my phone rang again. The same unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Instead, I answered. What do you want from me? I asked immediately. To make sure you stay alive. The voice was the same. Calm. Controlled. Impossible to read. You expect me to believe that? No, he said. I expect you to be cautious. That is different. I walked toward the kitchen window. My hands were shaking again. Who are you? For several seconds, there was only silence. Then he answered. My name is Luca Moretti. The name meant nothing to me. At least at first. Then a memory surfaced. A conversation between two doctors during a night shift months earlier. A news article someone had mentioned. A wealthy businessman. Private security. Real estate investments. Charitable foundations. The kind of man whose name occasionally appeared in newspapers, but whose face rarely did. My eyes drifted toward the photograph on my phone. Green eyes. Dark hair. The same man. Why are you calling me? I asked quietly. Because other people know those photographs exist. A knot formed in my stomach. What people? The kind who ask fewer questions than I do. I closed my eyes. The room suddenly felt too warm. I never asked for any of this. I know. His answer came immediately. Not cold. Not dismissive. Almost understanding. That surprised me. Then leave me out of it. I cannot. The firmness in his voice made my chest tighten. Why? Another pause. Because once someone notices you, pretending they did not is no longer an option. Before I could respond, movement outside caught my attention. A man had appeared beside the SUV. Tall. Wearing a dark suit despite the afternoon heat. He was looking directly at my building. Directly at my window. I stepped backward instinctively. Do not panic, Lucas said. My heart nearly stopped. How do you know what I am looking at? Because I am looking at it too. I froze. Then I rushed back to the window. Across the street, another vehicle had pulled up behind the SUV. Black sedan. Tinted windows. Different from before. The suited man was no longer standing casually. He looked alert now. Focused. Watching. Emily. Luca's voice became sharper. Listen carefully. Every instinct in my body screamed that something had changed. What is happening? I whispered. Someone found you faster than I expected. My pulse thundered in my ears. What do I do? The answer came instantly. Leave your apartment. Right now? My people are already on their way. Then the line went dead. I did not waste another second. The moment the call ended, I grabbed my purse, my phone charger, and the first jacket I could find. My heart pounded so hard it felt impossible that nobody else in the building could hear it. Oliver meowed from the couch as I rushed toward the door. I will be back, I promised, though I was no longer sure that was true. The hallway outside seemed normal. Too normal. An elderly neighbor watered her plants near the elevator. Someone played music behind a closed apartment door. Life continued exactly as it always had. Meanwhile, mine felt like it was unraveling by the minute. I pressed the elevator button. Nothing. The display remained frozen on the first floor. I pressed it again. Still nothing. My stomach tightened. Maybe it was broken. Maybe I was overthinking everything. Then I remembered the suited man outside. The strange second vehicle. Luca's warning. Leave now. Suddenly the stairwell seemed like the better option. I pushed through the heavy metal door and started down 3 flights. My footsteps echoed against the concrete walls. Fast. Uneven. Nervous. By the time I reached the lobby, I was already out of breath. The front entrance sat 20 feet away. Through the glass doors, I could still see the black SUV parked across the street. Rain had started again. Light droplets danced across the sidewalk and reflected the afternoon sky. For one brief moment, everything looked ordinary. Then the lobby doors opened. 2 men entered. Dark jackets. Serious expressions. Neither looked familiar. Neither looked like a neighbor. Instinct screamed at me. Do not go that way. I immediately turned and headed toward the rear exit that led into the alley. Behind the building, my pulse thundered in my ears as I pushed through another door and stepped into the damp afternoon air. The alley was empty. At first. Then a black sedan rolled slowly around the corner and stopped. My entire body froze. The rear passenger door opened. A tall man stepped out holding an umbrella. Not a weapon. Not a threat. Just an umbrella. Yet every nerve in my body remained on high alert. He wore a charcoal suit and looked like he belonged on the cover of a magazine for expensive watches. Emily Carter? He asked calmly. I took a step backward. Who are you? My name is Marco. His voice was polite. Professional. Mr. Moretti sent me. I almost laughed. The situation had become so absurd that hearing those words somehow made perfect sense. How do I know that is true? The man reached into his jacket. My muscles instantly tightened. Instead of pulling out anything dangerous, he produced a folded piece of paper. Because he knew you would ask. Cautiously, I took it. For words were written in neat handwriting. White cat. Blue curtains. The same details from the text message. My breath caught. Marco lowered the umbrella slightly as rain began to fall harder around us. Miss Carter, he said gently, you can stand here and keep asking questions. Or you can come with me and get some answers. I looked back toward my apartment building, then toward the waiting sedan. For the first time since all of this began, I realized something unsettling. I was no longer deciding whether to trust Luca Moretti. I was deciding whether I had any other choice. I expected handcuffs. I expected threats. I expected the kind of situation that ended with my face on the evening news. Instead, I found myself sitting in the back seat of a luxury sedan that smelled faintly of leather and rain while Manhattan drifted past the tinted windows. Nobody spoke. Marco sat in the front passenger seat, occasionally answering quiet calls through an earpiece. The driver focused on the road, and I sat there wondering how my life had gone from emergency room shifts and student loan payments to secret car rides with men in tailored suits. 40 minutes later, the city skyline faded. Behind us, the roads became quieter, the buildings larger. Gates appeared ahead. Massive wrought iron gates surrounded by stone walls and perfectly maintained hedges. The sedan slowed. Security cameras tracked our approach. The gates opened automatically. My stomach sank. We drove another quarter-mile before the house came into view. Calling it a house felt ridiculous. It looked more like a private resort. Stone architecture, floor-to-ceiling windows, landscaped gardens stretching across several acres, fountains, security personnel positioned discreetly around the property. Wealth on a scale I had only seen in magazines. The sedan stopped beneath a covered entrance. Marco stepped out and opened my door. Rain tapped softly against the roof above us. Welcome, he said. I stared at him. You say that like I had a choice. To my surprise, a faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. Fair point. Inside, the house was even more intimidating. Marble floors reflected soft golden light. A staircase curved upward toward a second level. Modern artwork hung on walls that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. Everything felt quiet, controlled, ordered, the opposite of my chaotic life. A woman in her 50s greeted us near the foyer. Miss Carter, she said warmly. I am Elena. If you need anything, please tell me. Her kindness caught me off guard. Anything? I asked. Anything reasonable, she corrected gently. I almost laughed. Almost. Elena led me upstairs to a large guest suite. The bedroom alone was larger than my apartment. Fresh clothes waited on the bed. A tray of food sat on a nearby table. Through the windows, I could see rolling green hills disappearing into the rain. "You can rest here," Elena said. "Mr. Moretti will speak with you later." "How much later?" She hesitated. "That depends on him." Then she left. I immediately crossed the room and tested the door. It opened. No lock. No guard outside. That surprised me. Next, I checked the windows. Beautiful view. Very secure glass. Finally, I stepped onto a small balcony overlooking the property. The estate stretched in every direction. Gates, cameras, security vehicles, endless acres of private land. That was when the realization hit me. Nobody had locked me inside this room. Nobody needed to. Leaving would be nearly impossible anyway. I stood there watching the rain fall across the distant gardens until movement below caught my eye. A black SUV rolled into the driveway. Several people exited. Then a tall figure stepped out last. Dark hair, long black coat, confident stride. Even from this distance, I recognized him instantly. Luca Moretti had finally arrived. And for the first time, I realized something even more unsettling than being brought here. The moment he stepped onto the property, every person around him seemed to relax. As if the most dangerous man I had ever met was somehow also the one person everyone trusted to keep things under control. I did not meet Luca Moretti that night. At least not officially. Hours passed. The rain continued outside. Dinner arrived. Then coffee. Then silence. Nobody came to question me. Nobody demanded my phone. Nobody asked about the photographs. The longer I stayed in that room, the stranger everything felt. Around 10 o'clock, curiosity finally defeated common sense. I left the guest suite and followed the sound of distant voices through the enormous house. The hallways seemed endless. Soft lighting reflected across polished floors. Expensive artwork lined the walls. Every detail looked carefully chosen. Nothing felt accidental. As I rounded a corner overlooking the main level, I heard Luca's voice for the first time in person. Calm, low, controlled. I stopped immediately. Below me, he stood near a large fireplace speaking with several men in suits. Nobody interrupted him. Nobody argued. They simply listened. It was not fear that caught my attention. It was trust. The kind of trust people place in someone they believe will solve problems no matter how difficult they become. That did not fit the image I had built in my head. I expected someone arrogant, someone reckless, someone eager to remind everyone how much power he had. Instead, Luca listened more than he spoke. When one of the men finished explaining something, Luca nodded once and offered instructions so quietly I could barely hear them. The room immediately shifted into motion. Phones appeared. People moved. Decisions became actions. The entire operation seemed to revolve around him. I started backing away before anyone noticed me. Unfortunately, I was too late. Miss Carter. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Marco stood behind me holding a tablet. Somehow he moved with less sound than a cat. You should probably be asleep. I placed a hand against my chest. You people enjoy sneaking up on others? A rare smile crossed his face. Occupational hazard. Before I could reply, another voice entered the conversation. Let her stay. Every muscle in my body tightened. Lucas stood at the far end of the hallway. Up close, he looked exactly like the man in the photograph, and somehow nothing like him at the same time. He was taller than I expected. Broad shoulders beneath a black sweater. Dark hair slightly damp from the rain. Green eyes that seemed to notice everything. He did not look angry. He did not look threatening. That should have reassured me. It did not. Marco quietly excused himself, leaving us alone. Luca approached slowly. Not like a predator. Not like a captor. More like someone trying not to startle a frightened animal. You have had a difficult day, he said. That is one way to describe it. His expression almost softened. Almost. You are angry. You brought me here. I did. Without asking. Yes. At least he was honest. I folded my arms. Then explained why. Lucas studied me for several seconds before answering. Because the people looking for you are not interested in conversations. The words settled heavily between us. And you are? I asked. For the first time, something unexpected appeared in his eyes. Weariness. Genuine weariness. Emily, he said quietly. If I wanted to hurt you, we would not be having this discussion. Then he glanced toward the large windows overlooking the dark property outside. The real problem is that they are no longer looking for the photographs. My stomach tightened. Then what are they looking for? Luca turned back toward me. His expression had become completely serious. You. I slept badly. Every sound seemed louder inside that enormous house. Every creak of the floorboards made me open my eyes. Every passing vehicle somewhere beyond the gates pulled me awake again. By morning, I felt more exhausted than when I had arrived. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the guest suite. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. Then reality returned all at once. Luca Moretti. The photographs. The phone calls. The warning. They are looking for you. I showered, changed into the clothes Elena had left for me, and finally ventured downstairs. The smell of coffee led me toward a bright breakfast room overlooking the gardens. Elena greeted me with a warm smile and immediately placed a plate in front of me. Fresh fruit, eggs, toast. Enough food for 3 people. You should eat, she said. Everyone says that to nurses. That is because nurses never listen. Despite everything, I laughed. It was the first genuine laugh I had managed in days. For a few minutes, things felt almost normal. Then Marco entered the room, carrying a folder. His expression instantly erased any comfort I had been feeling. Mr. Moretti would like to see you. My appetite disappeared. Luca was waiting in a library larger than the public library near my apartment. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves covered the walls. Sunlight spilled across dark wood floors. He stood near a desk reviewing documents. When I entered, he closed the folder in front of him and gestured toward a chair. Please sit. I remained standing. You keep saying people are looking for me. I want the truth. Luca nodded slowly. Fair enough. For a moment, he seemed to consider how much to tell me. Then he leaned back slightly. The men you photographed were meeting with someone who betrayed a very powerful organization. Organization? Call it a business partnership that ended badly. I folded my arms. That sounds like a politician avoiding a question. To my surprise, one corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Perhaps. Then his expression became serious again. The important part is that your photographs prove who attended that meeting. I stared at him. The pictures are blurry. Not blurry enough. My stomach tightened. Then why not simply delete them? Luca looked directly at me. Because they already know they exist. The room felt colder. So this is all happening because I accidentally dropped my phone? Yes. The absurdity of it hit me immediately. One careless moment. One stupid accident. My entire life turned upside down because gravity had decided to ruin my week. Luca seemed to recognize the thought on my face. I know it is unfair. That does not really help. No, he admitted quietly. It does not. Silence settled between us. Then a knock interrupted the conversation. Marco entered without his usual calm expression. Something was wrong. I could see it immediately. He handed a document to Luca. Luca read it once. Then a second time. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just enough for me to notice. What happened? I asked. Neither man answered right away. Finally, Luca looked up. His green eyes had become impossibly hard. Someone inside my organization has been sharing information. A chill ran down my spine. You mean there is a leak? Luca nodded once. And that means whoever is searching for you may already know exactly where you are. For the rest of the day, the estate felt different. Nothing obvious had changed. The staff still moved quietly through the halls. The garden still looked perfect beyond the windows. Coffee still appeared whenever someone needed it. Yet an invisible tension lingered beneath everything. People spoke more softly. Phones appeared more often. Doors closed quicker. Even I could feel it. Someone inside Luca's world had broken his trust, and that seemed to concern everyone, including Luca himself. That evening, rain returned. Thick gray clouds rolled across the sky, turning the estate dark long before sunset. I found myself sitting in the library, pretending to read one of the books while actually watching the storm through the windows. My thoughts refused to settle. Every answer seemed to create 2 new questions. Why was Luca protecting me? Who was searching for me? And why did none of this feel as simple as it had at the beginning? Around 7 o'clock, a sharp alert sounded somewhere in the house. Not loud, not dramatic, just a brief electronic tone. Yet, the reaction was immediate. Several staff members stopped what they were doing. Marco appeared in the doorway seconds later. His expression was calm, but I was beginning to understand that calm meant something very different in this house. Emily, he said, I need you to come with me. My stomach tightened instantly. What happened? Please. That was all he said. We moved quickly through the hallways. As we approached the main level, I noticed security personnel speaking into earpieces. More vehicles were arriving outside. Rain streaked across the windows as headlights crossed the driveway. The atmosphere felt focused rather than chaotic, controlled rather than frightened, which somehow made it more unsettling. Marco guided me into a smaller sitting room near the center of the house. Luca was already there, standing beside the fireplace, looking toward the window. When he turned, I immediately noticed something different. Not fear, not anger, determination. The kind that appears after a difficult decision has already been made. What is going on? I asked. Luca stepped closer. I need you to trust me. I almost laughed. You realize that is becoming your favorite sentence. For the first time all day, a faint smile appeared. Then it vanished. We received confirmation that the leak is real. My chest tightened. And whoever is responsible shared information they should never have had access to. I swallowed hard. About me? Luca nodded once. The room suddenly felt smaller. So what happens now? For several seconds, neither man answered. Rain tapped steadily against the windows. Somewhere deeper in the house, a door closed. Finally, Luca spoke. Now we move faster than they expect. I stared at him. You make that sound simple. It is not simple. His voice softened slightly. But it is necessary. Something about his expression stopped me from arguing. For the first time since all of this began, I realized he looked tired. Not physically, emotionally, like someone carrying responsibilities that never truly disappeared. Then a voice crackled through Marco's earpiece. Both men reacted instantly. Marco glanced toward Luca. Luca's eyes narrowed slightly. What? I asked. Marco hesitated. Luca did not. We just learned something important. My pulse accelerated. What? Luca looked directly at me. The person who betrayed us is someone I have trusted for years. The confession hung in the air long after Luca stopped speaking. Someone he had trusted for years. Someone close enough to learn details that should never have left these walls. I expected anger. I expected him to look furious. Instead, he looked disappointed. Somehow that felt heavier. The storm continued outside. Rain traced slow paths down the windows while silence settled across the room. What happens now? I finally asked. Luca glanced toward the fireplace before answering. Now the uncertainty is gone. I frowned. That sounds like good news. In a way, it is. His eyes met mine. A hidden problem is always more dangerous than a visible one. Over the next 2 days, the atmosphere inside the estate gradually changed. The tension never disappeared completely, but it became focused, organized, purposeful. People moved with confidence again. Conversations were quieter, but no longer nervous. For the first time since arriving, I felt like I could breathe. I spent mornings walking through the gardens, afternoons reading in the library. Sometimes I helped Elena prepare meals simply because standing still made me restless. The strangest part was how normal everything began to feel. Normal was not a word I ever expected to associate with Luca Moretti's world. Yet somehow it happened. One afternoon, I found him sitting alone on a terrace overlooking the property. No phone, no meetings, no security briefing, just coffee and silence. I thought people like you were always busy, I said as I approached. A faint smile appeared. People like me? Mysterious billionaires with endless security teams. I will try to schedule more mysterious activities. I laughed despite myself and took the empty chair across from him. For a while we simply watched the sunlight settle across the distant hills. Peaceful. Unexpectedly peaceful. Then Luca placed a small envelope on the table between us. What is that? I asked. Your future. I stared at him. That sounds dramatic. It probably does. He nodded toward the envelope. Inside were documents. New apartment arrangements. Temporary security assistance. Contact numbers. Everything I would need to return to my old life safely. I looked up slowly. You are letting me leave. It was always your choice. I almost argued. Then I realized he believed that. Even after everything. Especially after everything. The answer caught me off guard. For several seconds I could not find words. When I first met Luca, I thought he was controlling every part of my life. Now he was placing the decision entirely in my hands. Later that evening, a car waited near the front entrance. My bag sat beside the door. The sky was clear for the first time in days. Luca stood nearby with his hands in his coat pockets. Neither of us seemed eager to speak first. Finally, I picked up my bag and walked toward the waiting vehicle. One step, then another. Freedom. The thing I had wanted from the beginning. Yet halfway there, I stopped. Something felt wrong. I turned around. Luca had not moved, had not tried to stop me, had not asked me to stay. He simply waited. Looking at him, I finally understood the truth. The most dangerous part of this story was never the photographs. It was discovering that the man I feared most had become the person I trusted most. I smiled, set my bag back down, and walked toward him instead.